Hey there, I am Noelle Tarr, and I am really excited to talk to you today about 3 common mistakes that I see people make when doing the air squat, also known as the body weight squat. This is a topic that I am really passionate about because years ago I could barely do an air squat properly, and by doing the exercises that I'm going to show you how to do today, I can now do a squat with proper form and injury-free, which is really important. So the first common mistake that I see people make, this is really, in particular, a popular one that people make when they're just starting to get into doing air squats, is knees caving inward. Knees caving inward. So a lot of people have great stance, feet shoulder width apart, and as they go down into the squat, that second lower half of the squat, their knees will start to cave inward, almost like they're touching each other. So it kind of looks like this. Okay, so what's happening there is the glute med and the glute min are not activating. Those muscles are actually what keep our knees in line with our feet. And if they're not activating, then our knees are going to cave inward. So what you actually want to mentally think about is lightly pushing your knees out when you're doing that squat. You don't want to think about over pushing them out, just having a light push so that they stay in line and track right over the feet. If you struggle with this, a popular glute activation exercise that I like to do is you can actually use a band. So I'm going to grab a basic TheraBand, tied into a knot, and I'm going to step into it and actually do squats with the band. Now first, if you're just new to doing stuff like this with the band, I want you to do this without any weight. So you're just going to practice standing feet shoulder width apart. You're going to go down into that squat and mentally think about keeping that band, that tension in that band, and pushing those knees out. That'll really get the glute med and that glute min activated. Now you can also add weight to this, and you can do other squats with the band, and it's great to do just before doing lower body exercises. So if you're going to go into a lower body strength day, doing 3 sets of 10 with the band on, just basic air squats with the band, is really helpful for getting that glute med and that glute min activating. So the second most common mistake that I see people make when doing the air squat is they bend forward. Sure, you've seen this. This is a pretty popular mistake that people make. Instead of actually sitting down and thinking about taking a seat, they actually think about bending forward and grabbing something up off the ground. So I'm going to show you what that looks like wrong. We bend forward in that air squat. It's almost like we're picking something up off the ground. What you actually want to do is mentally think about shooting your hips back behind you, keeping your chest up, almost envisioning like there's a wall in front of you, and you want to keep that chest up, and you act like you're sitting back into a chair. Okay, so we're going to tighten those glutes, keep our chest up. I like to keep my hand right on my chest just to mentally have that cue of keeping my chest up. Now, if you in particular struggle with this, one thing that can help is really mentally thinking about sitting back into a chair. One of the drills that I highly recommend, you can do this with a kettlebell or without. I'm going to do it with a kettlebell, but it's called the Goblet Squat. Okay, so what you're actually going to do is grab that kettlebell if you got one. You're going to hold it by the horns. You're going to hold it by the horn. And this is going to, holding that weight up here is going to make us keep our chest up. We're going to go down into a squat, putting our elbows inside of our knees. And as we get it to the bottom, we're going to lightly press our knees out with our elbows. It's just a light grind. What we're doing is working hip mobility, engaging our hips, helping to loosen them up, stand up. What I would recommend is staying in that position for at least 10 seconds. Do that squat, get down into it, pry open a little bit, hold that for 10 seconds. You can do that a couple times. And what this is really going to do is open up your hips, okay? Because a lot of people have over tight hip flexors. Because again, we sit all day, right? Sit all day at work, sit on the couch, sit down to eat dinner. And what's happening is when we're in that constant flexion, our hip flexors are in this shortened and tightened position. So we need to be doing things proactively each day to make sure that our hips stay open and have more mobility. Doing the goblet squat and prying open is one of those ways that we can do that. Okay, the last most common mistake that I see people make when doing the air squat is something called butt winking. So yes, your butt does like to flirt, but it's not necessarily a good thing. What is happening with the butt wink is actually your pelvis at the bottom of a squat is tilting underneath your body. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, so we're going to have a good stance, feet shoulder width apart. We're going to go down and we're going to tilt our lower back underneath our bottom. So our pelvis is going to tilt under. So what that's doing is that actually is disengaging the glutes, so the glutes are unfiring. And we're putting a lot of vulnerability. We're making our back, lower back in particular, very vulnerable. So that SI joint area, that's going to be in a position, we're not protecting it anymore, and it's going to be in a position where it can become injured. A lot of times when people pull their lower back, or they feel a slight twinge or feel pain in their back, specifically at the bottom of the squat, it's because of that rotation underward or that butt wink. So what can you do to make sure that your butt is not flirting? One thing you can do is thinking about making sure that you keep your glutes engaged even at the bottom. So we're going to get into hips shoulder width, feet shoulder width apart. We're going to go down to the bottom and we're going to maintain that tension in our glutes. Maintaining tension all the way to the bottom. All the way to the bottom. We want to keep that tension. Tight core, tight glutes. Stand back up. Now, because again, we sit all day and a lot of us have gluteal amnesia and our glutes turn off, I highly recommend incorporating some sort of glute activation exercises into your weekly routine. One of my favorite ones, I'm going to show you how to do it here. You need to get a pillow. I just so happen to have one here. You're going to get a pillow. What we're going to do is put that on the ground. And you're going to actually lay on top of it so that your hips, it's just underneath your hips, and your hips go over top of the pillow. So, on the ground. Now you're going to face down. Bend one knee up. So by bending the knee, we're taking the hamstrings completely out of it. We're going to squeeze our glutes and lift that knee off of the ground and hold that there for 10 seconds. We're going to hold it there for 10 seconds. Bring it back down. We're going to do that 10 more times, up to 10 more times. You can work your way up to that. Squeeze the glutes, lift the knee, put the knee back down. And you can do this with the other leg as well. Squeeze the glutes, lift the knee, come back down. This is a great activation drill because it actually takes the low back and the hamstrings out of it, which tend to dominate and take over, especially with gluteal amnesia or glutes that aren't firing appropriately. So you can do that, 10 each side, just before you do lower body exercises. It's also great to incorporate into your off days or your rest days to really make sure that those glutes are firing and staying engaged. So to review, 3 common mistakes. Knees caving inward. Make sure that you keep those knees out. Think about lightly pushing your knees out. Keep that chest up. Don't bend forward. Think about having a wall in front of you. You're bending forward. Okay. And then the butt wink. Make sure that you're maintaining tension with your glutes at the bottom of the squat. So even at the very bottom, below parallel, we want to maintain that tension in our glutes and our core. Keep it tighten at the bottom. Stand back up. Hey, those are the 3 common mistakes that people make when doing the air squat. For more from me, go ahead and hit subscribe and you'll stay up to date with all the videos that I do here and all the stuff that I talk about at coconutsandkettlebells.com. Thanks so much.